Happy Friday. It's time for the Richard Skipper Friday Wrap-Up Show. Who and what are you celebrating today? Richard Skipper believes every day is worth celebrating. But today, we wrap up the week with a dose of positivity. You never know who might show up or what might happen, so get ready. Your skipper is now coming on board, and we are ready to set sail. All aboard!
Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is our Friday wrap-up show, so we're wrapping up the week and we're wrapping up the month. Can you believe it? January has come and gone, almost. But as you all know, all this month, I've been celebrating National Book Blitz Month. This is to celebrate authors and their books, and I have 4 incredible authors waiting in the wings. I have all of their books right here on my desk, and believe it or not, I've read them all. So I am so excited that you're all here today. Let's see who is watching. A few friends are here. Natasha Lombardi is here. Alan, Sherry Callahan, Jeffrey Albright. Hello, Jeffrey. Ron Spivak. Russ Woolley is here. Tess LaBella, Doug McAllister, and Rosa Puzo. Now, before the show started, I asked for Sherry Callahan to pull a number 1 through 4, like let's make a deal. So number 3 is the door she pulled. None of our guests know who is behind door number 3, but I'm going to give you a sampling of some of the authors that we have celebrated on this platform since I started doing this at the beginning of COVID. And you'll meet our first author on the other side. Here they are. Not 1, but 2 books. Ellen Matzer is here again. I am so thrilled that she's here. Her first book, Nurses on the Inside, Stories of the HIV/AIDS Epidemic in New York City. And the second book, Beyond the Mask. The first book, obviously, took us all back there on the front lines of what it was like to be a nurse during the AIDS epidemic. Why would she write a book on that subject? Because she was there. She's a nurse, and this was her first book. This is her second, and I'm sure and I'm hoping there will be many more. So Ellen, thank you for being here today. And as I always do on our Friday wrap-up shows, who or what are you celebrating today?
Well, today I am celebrating my daughter Amy. I am very blessed that she is with us and happy and on the road to becoming very healthy again. And so I'm very proud and very honored to be her mom. And I have been celebrating her every day.
God bless her and God bless Amy. I know that you and I have corresponded about, it's been a difficult couple of months for Amy. And you have shared with me, I will not go into details today, just to say that I'm happy that she's on the mend and that you're able to be here today. Ellen, as I've said, with both of these books, the first book, of course, was about the AIDS epidemic and the crisis. And then you decided, along with your incredible writing partner, Valerie Hughes, to write a book that took us into COVID and what we were all going through. And the book came out in the throes of COVID with no idea of how we were going to get through this. But going through 2 epidemics like this, what have you learned that you can share with all of us about yourself, your process in writing, and what all of us can do to hopefully alleviate something like this happening again?
Well, I think, when Valerie and I wrote about our personal experiences with the HIV epidemic, at some point in the book, we had said something about there being another epidemic, pandemic, not knowing what would be coming forward. I think that we learned how to work together as a healthcare team under less than ideal circumstances in the HIV epidemic. Beyond the mask, I was actually not on the front lines. However, I interviewed many people that were. And one of those people was, in fact, my daughter, who was on the front line as a physician's assistant in an emergency room during the pandemic. And I drew on some of her experiences for that. And as far as, and what I wanted to say about Beyond the Mask was that a lot of that book had to be fictionalized only to protect the identities of people that we did interview as they were in fear of their jobs for exposing back then having not enough PPE, not enough support, not enough staff, etc. And it was a very, very scary time for people there. I was teaching at the time, and then we ended up on Zoom, on virtual, because we were asked to leave the facilities that we were on. Things have changed so much, and I'm glad that we wrote the book when we did, when we were in the throes of it, because as COVID becomes commonplace and the CDC talking about having the vaccination be annual along with your flu shot, we've forgotten about what happened back then, and we have forgotten about the people that we've lost. And I don't want to forget, just as I don't want to forget about the people that we lost during the HIV/AIDS epidemic who never stood a chance. So again, I always use hashtag well-lived lives, hashtag never forget. And that's the reason I don't think that I could write Beyond the Mask now, because back then it was so fresh and unfolding. And when we ended the book, we didn't even have a vaccine yet. So, you know, as time goes on, more and more people will have forgotten what it was like for those people that were on the front line. And when I speak of that, I not only speak of colleagues, but my daughter, my son, and my husband, all on the front line in different healthcare capacities. So I'm really pleased that it's out there. And I think that in years to come, when people have forgotten all about it, they will want to take a look back and see what happened.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to in-person interview both you and Valerie. And I've had both of you on the show in the past, both together and separately. And I know that you pulled Valerie into the process in both instances, as she's told us. But what did you learn about yourself through the process of a collaboration, co-writing a book with a dear friend and a mentor, I would say, as well?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I learned that I actually could write.
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, I didn't think, you know, for the first book, I said, I'm a nurse. What do I know about writing? And then just thoughts started flowing. And I realized how much I remembered about that time, which is now, you know, over 3 decades ago. And yes, and I did recruit Valerie into both books. And what we did was we tag team. I would send her what I wrote, and she would kind of add to it, or as we always called it, she would say, I'm going to do a little embroidery, Ellen. That's what she would call it. Her editing was embroidering, and send it back to me. And then it would spark another memory for me, and I would write some more, and then she would write some more and send it back to me, and we would go back and forth like that. So oftentimes we didn't even feel a need to even speak on the phone. We just did this through email and reading, and then occasionally, like, we would say, "Wait a minute, we need to have a conversation about this or that." Nurses on the Inside was written with an indie publisher, and they had a lot to say about the book, and we had some issues going back and forth with them. So that was a problem. Valerie and I wrote Beyond the Mask on our own completely, and we didn't have anybody making any suggestions about what should be there and what should not be there.
Well, they're both incredible books. I want to let everyone know that all of these books, everyone, are available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, if you choose to go there, or whatever your platform is that you want to get these books. Call your favorite bookseller and ask for these books if they don't already have them. And I know that some of you on there have read these books. I know from some of the comments that I've gotten in the past. We're going to bring on our next guest. Ellen, you're actually going to help us bring on the next guest.
Okay.
But before we do, as you know, I have 4 mystery questions. So pick a number 1 through 4.
I'm going to go with 1.
And your question today, what's the first, maybe I asked you this before, I don't know. What's the first book that you ever bought?
The first book I ever bought. Well, Pippi Longstocking in the South Seas.
Good for you.
My childhood. I still remember that story, those stories.
I know they still hold up. They still hold up. Well, let's bring on our next guest. And so pick a number 1 through 3. And we'll see who our next guest is.
I'm going to pick number 1 again.
And that is my dear friend, Kevin Winkler. So see, you never know when you're going to be brought on. Now, let me tell you a little. Kevin is a librarian. He's an archivist. He's written these incredible books on dance. And the book that we're going to talk about today is Everything is Choreography, the musical theater of Tommy Tune. Has it been 2 years, Kevin?
No, a little over a year.
A little over a year.
15
Kevin
months.
and I co-hosted an event for Dancers Over 40, celebrating the amazing Tommy Tune, who we both can consider a friend.
Yeah.
You've written other books as well, but why a book about Tommy Tune, Kevin?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that because Tune's musicals kind of defined my theater going when I moved to New York in the late 70s. And I was there for all of those shows when they opened on Broadway, and they were highlights of my theater going experience. And I had come to feel that in the last several years, Tune had become a somewhat undervalued figure. He hadn't had a show on Broadway in a while. And a lot of the shows hadn't been revived. And I thought someone needs to remind people what a fabulous talent, what a true artist of the theater he is. And then I thought, well, why not me? I'll do it. So that was the impetus behind the book.
And it's a brilliant book. And I've told you that before, but I mean it.
Right.
So when you sat down to write this book, and this is something that the first words that we read in the book, are they the first words that you wrote?
No. I had to do I did a proposal and a sample chapter that I submitted to the publisher. So the first words I wrote for the book were really the proposal and then the sample chapter, which was not the first chapter in the book, but was just one that I thought would be fun to jump in and get my feet wet with.
Now, you were very fortunate because you got to sit down and talk with Tommy Tune.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you feel that you learned about Tommy that you didn't know prior to writing the book?
Oh boy, let's say. He's a true creative artist. You know, that word artist gets bandied about very easily, but he truly approaches his work from an artist's perspective. He doesn't simply take material and put it on the stage. He really shapes it, works with writers, composers, lyricists to create something unique. before he gets on stage. So he's and everything about the way he lives his life, his home, the way it's decorated, um, is has there's a sense of artistry to
Absolutely. I have to ask you, having been to his home a few times, is there a special spot in the house that is your favorite?
Well, I love that. It's like a little ladder arrangement
Exactly. That's where I was hoping you would
in
go.
a corner that has all of his 10 Tony Awards displayed on it. When you walk in, you can't help but notice it. It's the first thing, aside from the fabulous view, you can't help but notice this whole statue, it seems like, of Tony Awards.
And
So
it's
that's my
absolutely
favorite
wonderful.
spot. Yeah.
So, Kevin, you get to pick a mystery question, and then we're going to bring on our next guest. Pick a number 1 through 3.
Okay. 3.
And your question is, well, I like this. It's a statement. I have the power to create change. What changes have you created in your own life in the past year when it comes to your creativity?
What change? Oh man, you're asking some tough questions, or tough statements. I'm a pretty organized. I'm a pretty organized and disciplined person, but I can be kind of sloppy sometimes. So I've set a personal goal and changed the way I structure my day so that I can write when I'm at my freshest and my most creative. And so that's been a big change for me. That real new set of disciplines that I've imposed upon myself, and they've been helpful, and they've been they've helped me become more productive.
Now, are you currently writing a book?
I am. I'm almost. Well, I'm about 75% through a new book. Yes.
Are you able to
It's a
give
book
us?
about. Sure, I will tell you. It's a book about the career of Bette Midler
Wow.
that looks at her impact and her influence, not just as an artist, but as a kind of cultural icon, specifically the way that she created her performing style or ethos in a very specific milieu. I'm sure you know what that is. It was working in front of a group of gay men, mostly semi-clothed,
Right.
at the Continental Baths in New York City in the very early 1970s, and how she expanded that style and transmitted it to a mainstream audience without really changing it much in any way. So she's really been an important conduit of a kind of gay sensibility to a broader mainstream audience. And of course, today she's as mainstream as you can
That's
get.
true. That's true. What an amazing trajectory that she's had. And I can't wait, number 1, and I hope that you'll come back when the book is ready and we'll talk about it. So you bring on our next guest, 1 or 2?
2.
And we are meeting actually for the first time. I am, first of all, let me pull this book up so he knows that he's coming on. And it's The Marble Fawn of Grey Gardens. And Tony Maeda is here.
I guess
And
that's
I
me.
want to thank Dale Shores, who reached out to me the other day, and he said, you have to have Tony on the show.
That's
and
so sweet.
Tony, the book arrived yesterday.
It's so great. And you read it already?
And I could not put it down. I've gotten halfway through it, to be honest with you. But it is such an incredible book. And I'm looking at your bio and studying about you as well. And you and I have something in common that, you went to LA. I came to New York.
Mm-hmm.
You went to LA expecting the classic Hollywood that you were drawn to. And when I always joke that when I came to New York in 1979, I thought I was coming to the New York of Breakfast at Tiffany's and Sunday in New York.
Yeah.
And actually what I came into was Taxi Driver and Midnight Cowboy. So it was a very different world.
Yes.
But what I love about your career is, even though that world that you were expecting did not exist, you made it happen for yourself
Mm.
in terms of the work you do, the connections that you've made, the people that you've worked with. So many people that you've interviewed that are, friends of mine. Carol Cook, who we just lost.
Yes. God
Uh,
bless her. Yes.
yes,
Yes.
and wonderful, wonderful dear friend.
Yeah.
How did you get started? And I will get to your book in just a moment. But
Sure.
how did you get started in that area of the business?
Well, it's so funny, as you said, I came to Hollywood expecting to see William Holden at the Brown Derby. A total Lucy experience. And or Eve Arden, and I got Liza and Bert and Rent a Cop and some bad Fox shows. So well, it was actually very circuitous. I mean, I tried for a long time to be an actor, and I had some success. I was on some shows. I was on the Golden Girls, my very first show, and which was amazing. So I had little moments like that, but I realized that it just wasn't fulfilling me creatively. Plus I wasn't, to work steadily in this industry is very, very difficult. So I always wanted to write. I was always had a talent. I always felt, my mother always said, I had a talent for writing. And I met someone, and we decided to. He was a film historian, and I wasn't sure what that was. But I got a very, very fast crash course in it, and I'd already kind of been doing it my whole life. I mean, as I said, I loved old Hollywood. I loved old movies. I loved old television, classic television. My first memory of life is the first episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I mean, I remember this stuff so well. So it just seemed like it just kind of organically happened that suddenly I was in a position where I was researching these people and going to events and talking to people and meeting people. You mentioned Carol, which was one of the greatest, most painful days of my life, just because I was hurting so much from laughing.
That's true.
She's the only person that I actually peed on camera. I actually peed my pants on camera from laughing. I had a
And
little bit
she
because
would love that.
she knew, believe me. I said, I think I just went. And she went, oh, that's good. She was amazing. So I got to meet these incredible people, like right at the tail end. We just lost Carol, as you said. God bless her. She was around for 98 years. I'm so grateful that I got to know her for the last 10 and spend time with her. As I had mentioned Lucille Ball earlier, I got to work on the Lucy Show DVDs, talk to Lucy Arnaz, talk to her, talk to Barry Livingston, these people that were like fundamental in my life, so to be able to talk to them about things and to get their perspective and just hear that history was a gift, and if we just keep our hands off things, life kind of takes us in directions we're supposed to go, but we don't think we are. And Grey Gardens absolutely dovetails right into that whole thing about things I've always loved and been obsessed with. And suddenly I find I'm writing about it. And I'm not only writing about it, but I'm writing about it with the marble faun himself. I mean, Jerry is one of the most amazing people I've ever met and continues to be. So it was quite an experience.
How did the meeting happen with you and Jerry the first time?
Well, I was originally doing a book on the Maisels, on all of their films.
Mm-hmm.
And my writing partner and I went to the Met in New York. We flew to New York to see Albert. This was when Albert was alive, obviously. They were doing a screening of Grey Gardens, and he was going to talk before the screening, and then we were going to get together afterwards. And while he was talking, we heard this commotion, and it was a full auditorium. It was at the Met. There was a commotion in the back, and suddenly this guy comes bounding down the center aisle, and I hear all these whispers around me like, it's Jerry, marble faun, Jerry. And I turned to my friend and I said, I think that's Jerry. And he said, no, Jerry's dead.
Oh.
Because everybody thought Jerry was dead. And sure enough, Jerry was very much alive, and Albert introduced him. And afterwards, I went up to him and I said, we're writing this book. I would love to talk to you about your experiences at Grey Gardens. So we met the next day at a coffee shop. And I had the 3 most astounding hours I think I've ever had. I mean, one story after the other was more astounding than the next. And not just about Grey Gardens, but about his entire life. The other people he's met and had experiences with.
What a childhood he had.
And
oh,
the
my
childhood.
God.
And I realized that I said to him at this time, this is a story that needs to be told. your story, because it's not only about Grey Gardens, it's about addiction and recovery. It's about surviving childhood abuse. It's about, claiming your identity. It's about the family that you create as opposed to the family that you're born into, which is everything he did. So yeah, so we decided the Maisels book didn't work out, and I said, if you still want to do this, let's do it. And it took us 10 years,
Wow.
6 of which were editing. So Ellen, I have sympathy with you when you talk about your independent publisher, because same thing. And wow, the battles, wow, the battles we went through. But the book as it is what we're pretty proud of it.
Well, you should be proud of it. What is the one thing that you learned about the Beals that that really surprised you above all others? I mean, everyone has this image of who they are
Right.
based on not only the documentary, a Broadway musical, and a TV
HBO
movie
yeah,
that
yeah.
with Drew Barrymore and Jessica Lange, and I've seen many productions of the musical Grey Gardens. Did you ever go to Grey Gardens?
Yes, I did. I did before this last renovation. I went in 2010, 2011, around then when Jerry and I first started talking about writing the book. Yeah, I mean, it's just the bones are the same, but there's no cats, no raccoons, no holes in the ceiling.
No.
Yeah, it's an astounding place. Even more so now that they did it again. They renovated it.
No, it's a beautiful place. I've
Gorgeous,
been there
gorgeous
myself.
place. But I love what Jerry and I say in the book is, to him it was always gorgeous, because it was his home, it was his refuge from all the craziness in his life. I learned so much. It's so hard to pinpoint. I mean, I came to have so much respect for these women who basically took just the shreds of their lives and lived in such utter degradation with such dignity and such kind of absence of knowledge of it, really. Mrs. Beale, I think I was surprised to find out that Mrs. Beale was the font of wisdom. Now, a woman who's living in the conditions that Mrs. Beale is living in, you wouldn't think people would go to for wisdom, but she would get phone calls from Aristotle Onassis to comfort him after his son died because of the Jackie connection.
Mhm.
Jerry always went to her for advice, and he said that she had such wisdom about life, which I thought was amazing. And what I love about Edie is the story that Jerry told about Edie was that Edie, was quite the debutante. I mean, she really was the golden child of that generation. And she wasn't engaged to Joe Kennedy Jr., but she went out with him.
Mm-hmm.
And she also went out with Howard Hughes, which I was, being a film buff, was blown away by. But she stopped seeing Howard Hughes because she told her mother that he was too eccentric.
Wow.
Compared to Edie Beale. So these women had a grasp of reality, of their own reality, which was, their delusion, I think, is admirable in many respects, and we can all use a little bit of it sometime.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to let you pick a mystery question, one or two,
Okay.
and then we're going to bring on our next guest.
I'll go with one.
And Tony, I would love to have you and Jerry on the show. Perhaps we'll do a whole show celebrating Grey Gardens. I would love
that. Yeah.
So, well, I'm going to ask you this: what's the most embarrassing thing? Well, I think you just shared with us.
Oh, careful.
But what's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you during an interview?
And that was embarrassing. That was nobody knew that but me. I mean, I could just tell because I was in pain. I was laughing so hard. Gosh, the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me during an interview. Probably doing the entire interview with a piece of spinach on my teeth. Does that sound? It's pretty horrifying when it happens. Now it doesn't sound well, so we had spinach on his teeth. But at the time when I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't somebody tell me? So from then on, I always had somebody at the side to make sure everything was okay. But yeah, that was kind of embarrassing. Humiliating.
Well, you are a film buff, and our next guest is in a classic film. Before I bring her on, she was in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Incredible scenes with Harvey Keitel. I saw her the other day and I said she should have gotten an Academy Award on that performance alone. But she has a new book out. I'm going to bring this up on screen. It's a new memoir, and it just literally just came out. And it's called An Unruly Imagination. Lane Bradbury, the original Dainty June from
Wow.
Gypsy on Broadway. Lane Bradbury, I love you so much, as you know already. And I'm thrilled that you're here, and congratulations on a fun read.
Oh, good.
Yes. So what was the impetus for you to sit down and write this book?
Well, it was during the pandemic, and I sat down to write a cabaret show, and the cabaret show just kept getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer until I had a memoir. So it saved me, because I had something creative to do during this time. So I really actually was writing two things, but the memoir just took over, and then I went back and cut it into slices so that the cabaret show is now called We Must Remember These Moments. But it was a savior to me during that
Now,
time.
Lane, did you keep journals over the years, or was this total recall as you started to write the book?
Well, I have kept journals, but I've sort of stopped that habit. I wish I would go back and do that again. But I think I looked at some of the journals, but most of it is things that just really stayed in my head from life.
Mm-hmm. And as you were writing this book, what are some of the things that came up for you that really surprised yourself about yourself? I mean, the mind has a funny way of looking back on our past and shading certain things. What surprised you the most about looking back over your life and career?
My goodness, you ask hard questions, sugar. What surprised me the most? I was not always a good little girl, and I think maybe the thing that surprised me was that at the end of everything, I felt like that I had learned an awful lot, and I had become a broader person. I understood things more deeply than the way that I was brought up, and I. There's a place in the book where a psychiatrist asked me, what do you like about yourself, Lane? And I thought for a minute, and I said, this little soft place under my chin. And he said, is that all? And I said, yeah, that's all. And so I realized I liked all of me better, because I had metamorphosed in learning, and it helped me in a positive way. Negativity had helped me to become a more positive person, I guess.
And as you were writing the book, did you have outside eyes looking at it as well, guiding you as you were going along, or did you pretty much choose?
It was just me, just kind of going through the steps.
When did you know that the book was ready for the publisher? Was it a decision that you made? Was it an editor? Was it the publisher who said, Lane, it's time? When did you know it was time to give birth to this book?
Well, I had a couple of people read it, and then I went back and redid some things. And then I just thought, well, here we are. And I sent it into Amazon with a lot of help from a friend, because I'm not very good at all this computer stuff. So
Well, it's a great read, and again, it's called An Unruly Imagination. What a great title. How did you come up with the title for the book?
Because it's my imagination has always kind of driven me, sometimes into good things, sometimes into bad things, and it kind of has ruled me, So I just came up with it.
That's wonderful. So one of the things that I want to do with all of you is that I've got some just random questions that I pulled on the creative process. And I'm going to start with you, Ellen. And it says, this is an interesting thing that I pulled from my daily acts of kindness calendar. And it says, unsubscribe from email lists that you aren't interested in anymore. I hope I'm not on that list, by the way. Um, I mean, do you have a very full inbox? And if so, what do you do to help get rid of the clutter?
Yes, I do. I have a very full inbox. However, it is, for some reason, it is mostly offers to be a travel nurse. That has been happening since the COVID pandemic. You get on the list through the government as a nurse, and you get offers, and they keep coming and keep coming. And then I don't. Somebody once told me, don't ever unsubscribe from anything because it puts you at risk to be scammed. And so I
Really?
always remembered that. Yes, it was at an orientation for a position I did have one time, and one of the HR people was saying that don't ever unsubscribe, because then it documents actually who you are and makes it easier for people to scam you. So I never unsubscribe. I just delete.
Wow.
And
I've never known that before.
yeah, I'm trying to remember, because it was so many years ago, but I never forgot that. So I never unsubscribed to anything. I just delete it. And then of course, then the texts come, seeing recruiters from all over asking me if I want to work in Oklahoma and in a neonatal ICU. I'm not a neonatal nurse, and just everywhere. So that's where my inbox is cluttered with.
Wow.
But I don't unsubscribe. I just delete it and move on.
Kevin, this may seem like an unusual question, but it's all about creativity. When was the last time that you saw a beautiful sunset and you were truly able to enjoy it?
Would you believe yesterday?
Oh, good.
I'm down here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we have beautiful sunsets just about every night. Today it's kind of overcast and drizzly, but we have a beautiful sunset almost every night, and I appreciate it every time I see it, because when I'm in New York half the year, I usually don't see the sunset, but here in Florida, they're just gorgeous.
Somebody, and maybe one of you will do this, needs to write a book on how to find the beautiful sunsets in New York, because Ellen will tell you they are there, and you just have to be at the right spot at the right time.
Yeah.
So it's there.
Yeah.
Tony, what is the last thing that you volunteered for?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, I volunteered for I work with the Los Angeles LGBT Center. So
Thank you for
your
that.
answer there. So I do a lot of volunteering. But the last thing I did was this very, very cool, we called it Intergenerational Thanksgiving, where our senior community and our homeless youth community, unfortunately, got together and celebrated Thanksgiving, which was really, really kind of wonderful. We wanted them to be together, but they kind of naturally segregated into little areas. But they were all together in the feeling of the day, and some of them sat together. But that wasn't that long ago. So that was pretty much the last thing I did. It was very, very wonderful.
Wow, what an amazing thing to do. That's great. Lane, and maybe we know this with this book, maybe not, but the question for you is, when was the last time that you accomplished a personal goal or a dream?
The last time, well, I think finishing the book was one. Um, I feel like that I do that almost every day. I mean, I'm working on this new cabaret show. I love who I'm working with.
James Beeman,
I
who
get
is a brilliant
yes,
director.
yes, and Michael Roberts, who's my accompanist. And I mean, shoot, now just getting through a ballet class, that's an accomplishment. So, you know, um,
Well, God bless
I,
you for doing it.
I
Ellen, have you recently tried any new habits or hobbies as we're going into the new year?
Well, new. No, no. I mean, I picked up running. I mean, Richard knows this, but I had two hip replacements. One earlier in 2022, and one in 2019. And I had was running, and I had accomplished 25 Ks coming in
Wow.
one time, first in my age group, and then I picked up running
fantastic.
again. So this is my new goal again, is to get back up. I'm up to 2.5 miles again. So
Good for you. God bless you for that.
That's
you
great.
know, I wanted my goal is to do a small duathlon, which is run, bike, run, and I will be doing it in October, and I will be raising money for a cause at the time, probably something to do with mental health, but that's my goal. So
Good for
that'll
you.
be my new habit now, combining running, biking, and then running again. How's that?
That sounds great. Kevin, when it comes to your creativity, what do you hope that your life will look like in 8 years if you continue down the path that you're going now?
Oh my God. 8 years. I'm trying to figure. Let's say 8 plus however old I am. Yeah. I hope I'm alive.
Well, I hope so too.
I hope that I've had many travel adventures. I'm looking forward to getting back to traveling. I'm still haven't done much traveling since the pandemic, but I hope that I will continue to write and to create and to keep busy and to keep active. I think that's a key to staying young and vital, is to constantly be doing something that you enjoy and that stimulates your mind and your creativity.
Good for you. Great answer. Tony, what part of your career do you most love and wish that you could do more of?
Oh, wow. That's easy. Talking to these wonderful, wonderful icons. So I don't really use the word celebrity, but these people who were movers and shakers. Unfortunately, there are fewer and
I
fewer
know.
of them as we go on. I feel incredibly fortunate that I was able to talk to the people that that passed, and I love film. One of my goals is to get on TCM eventually. Hopefully that will happen. So that's probably one of my big
Dave
goals.
Carter, if you're watching, this should happen.
Yes, that would be great.
No, I would love that as well. I'd love to see you there. Lane, what is it very easy for you in your career that other people might find difficult?
I feel like that I was given kind of a sense of truth, and just a sense of truth that kept me from acting instead of being.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Do you understand that?
I know exactly what you're saying.
Okay. And
But
I want
when
to.
it comes to your work, there's such a realism in your acting that it just jumps off the screen.
Well, I think that was a natural gift, and then it got reinforced when I became a member of the Actors Studio. I stopped saying acting. I started saying being, because acting can be acting, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and being is being, and it's true and real. Um, I would love. I would love to make some contact with you, Tony, about the LGBTQ community,
Oh,
because I'm very concerned about them now, and I have an idea about. Um, in fact, I've written a song about that community, and
mhm.
I think Michael Roberts is going to put music to it,
Oh,
and
wow.
I want to do something that goes maybe on YouTube
Mhm.
that will help um, all the all the negative stuff that they're having to deal with now in
Yeah,
this world.
thank you. I will definitely. Let's,
I'll
you
put
know,
Okay,
you in
good,
touch with each
put
other.
us in
Oh,
touch. Yes,
okay.
absolutely. We'd love
great.
that.
That's great. And God bless you, Lane, for doing that.
Yeah,
Because,
it's wonderful.
I
It's
mean,
wonderful.
the LGBTQ community, especially our youth, are going through a very difficult time right now.
Very difficult. Very
Yes.
difficult. Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
God
mhm.
bless. Yeah.
Well, God bless you for that. Um, Ellen, I'm going to put you on the spot with this next question. You have become, if you weren't already, a brilliant writer with your two books. I can't wait for the next one. And I've got an idea for you that I want to talk to you about privately. Um, but, and again, I'm putting you on the spot with this question. Um, and and what I want you to answer honestly, okay? Do you offer any creative services for free? If yes, why? And if no, why not?
Creative services. Well, I mean, I guess I would have to understand your version of creative services. I mean,
Well, for example, maybe a workshop in writing, or or the knowledge that you have. Uh,
well, I don't offer tips on writing, or anytime an indie author has reached out to me and asked, how did I go about publishing, or how did I query, my process, I'm always happy to share that. What I do offer is my students. I'm a professor now of nursing, and I do a lot of tutoring, extra tutoring, and assisting students who are trying to become nurses with their studies and with understanding how to put what they learn in the classroom in the clinical facility. So I do that. So to me, that's being a nurse in this day and age. You need to be very creative with the diminishing supplies, diminishing staff, lack of support from administration. So,
Unbelievable. The
um,
nurses are just going through a horrific time here in New York.
yeah, I mean, and really everywhere else. I mean, nurses are leaving the profession in droves, and and especially in the long-term care facilities right now. And
Mhm.
what we're getting now is in the long-term care facilities is people who had survived but didn't quite make it from long COVID. So people who are
Mhm,
kind of stuck on
Yeah.
a ventilator like forever.
mhm.
Um, and so they're getting the brunt of the lack of services and staffing. And just to piggyback off of what Lane was saying, and Tony, I'm so pleased to hear that you've written a song for the LGBTQ community, and going back to say that they have suffered for decades.
Mm.
Having
Yeah.
been there,
Yes, you were there. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
seeing what happened, and now certainly what's happening with our youth is just astonishing.
It's unbelievable.
Valerie and I donate the proceeds of both of our books to any worthy cause. Sometimes it's nursing students, sometimes it's GMHC, LGBTQ Trevor Project. I mean, everything that we get, which is, if you're authors, you probably know is minimal, unless you're John Grisham. It just, there, to me, there's no better way than to just donate it to somebody who needs it.
That's wonderful.
That's
That's
wonderful.
wonderful.
Kevin, what is it about your writing that is unique to yourself that no one else can do?
Oh my God, Richard, you asked some tough questions. Oh man. Um, you might as well ask me how I grab a star from the sky. I don't
But if
know.
anyone can do it, Kevin, you can.
I like to think I have a perspective, a sense of humor that I apply to what could be considered rather dry subjects. Kind of documenting Broadway. Well, that's not a dry subject, but
No, don't let Tommy
a
Tune hear
serious
that.
subject. A serious subject.
Yeah.
I like to think I have a light touch with my writing in that area. And I don't know. I guess a certain way with the phrase, perhaps. I'll have to think about that and get back to you in more detail. That's a tough
Well, I
question.
think you've answered, but good for you. And Tony, how do you most enjoy helping others within the industry?
Within the industry. Wow, that's interesting. These are tough questions, Richard. You're right. Gosh, within the industry, which industry are you talking about here?
In show business.
In show business, try to discourage people not to do it. That's fun. No, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. I hope that I can be honest with people. I mean, I don't get a lot of questions about what I do, but I hope if I do, I hope I'm just honest with people about how incredibly difficult it is, as Lane and Kevin, and I mean, you can certainly say to attest to. It's just you've got to love it with everything. You have to have no other choice. So I actually try to gently steer them in another direction, if it's at all possible. I remember I was in an interview once I read with Betty Davis, and somebody said to her, how do I decide whether I want to become an actor? And she said, if you have to ask that question, don't become an actor. And it's like, that's kind of it. You know what I mean? If there's
And
any
she also
doubt in your
said, learn
mind.
to be hated in the business.
She said, what?
Learn to be hated in the
Yeah,
business.
well, she would know. I mean, because my God, talk about a woman who stood up for everything that she believed in.
Mhm.
God, it's amazing. But so I feel that kind of really realistic advice is the best advice I can give, and hopefully helps people. And then they'll go on or they won't. That's the way it is. So I think
Great.
I kind of sort of answered that. That's a tough one.
So, Lane, have you ever experienced in this business jealousy of another artist? And if so, how did you get past that jealousy?
Well, yes. Let's see who. I certainly have experienced jealousy. You deal with it, and then it's such a negative. If you're jealous, it's such a negative place to be that at some point you've got to maybe just get through it and then go to work on yourself. Go to work doing what you yourself need to do to get where you need to be. But as long as as long as jealousy is on top of you, it's almost like you're immobile. So you better damn well get past it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this is going to be my final question for all of you. Each day I pull a word of the day. And the word that I pull today is vulnerability. And I want to ask each of you in this business, all of us are vulnerable every time we step in front of the camera, every time we sit down to put our words on paper. So my question for each of you is, when do you feel that you've been the most vulnerable in this business, either as a writer or in any other area of your career? And the pluses and the minuses that came out of being in that position. And I'm going to start with you, Ellen.
Well, as an author, that came about just as kind of as a dare. So I didn't really feel any vulnerability there. We wrote what we wrote, and it came out, and Nurses on the Inside is sold actually pretty well. Beyond the Mask is actually doing better now. But I have to say that my vulnerability lies with nursing, and wondering or hoping that I will make a difference with every patient's and students' lives that I touch. That somehow I will let them have a better day, a more comfortable day, a more pain-free day, a day that doesn't have them have a complication that sends them back to the hospital or worse. So, I have to think very carefully when I'm teaching my students. I always tell them, if your gut says something's wrong, and you need to investigate that. And I said, I never override my gut. If I walk into a room and I see somebody, a patient, and there's something about them, and I may not know what it is right away, and something tells me something is bad is going to happen, I never ignore that feeling. And I said, and then we investigate. And it has always served me well in my almost 46 years in the nursing profession.
God bless you. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Kevin, same question.
I think I'm at my most vulnerable when I'm literally, I'm not looking at, when I sit down to write, I'm not looking at a blank sheet of paper, but when I look at a blank computer screen and know that I want to fill it and not sure exactly how I'm going to go about filling it, that blank screen can make you very vulnerable. I feel that. It's a humbling experience to look at a blank screen and be at the very beginning of a project. But the flip side of that, of course, is that when you fill it and you're happy with the way you have filled it, there's nothing more satisfying and nothing more empowering.
Great.
True.
Tony?
True. Probably right before that, they point at you and say, go, start talking on a lot of these things that I do, because, in these conversations I have, there's no scripts. I mean, I have ideas about what I want to ask, but I don't know what the answers are going to be. And that's very vulnerable, but it's also very wonderful because it's very open. And that's when the inspiration comes. That's when the ideas come. So I love that feeling. I mean, it's frightening, but I love that feeling of being vulnerable and open to what the situation or what the moment may bring. And it's usually in those situations. Yeah.
Great answer. That's great. Lane?
When you say vulnerability to me, I think of working with Jerry Robbins,
Oh,
because he to me, he was a complete tyrant. And he, at one point we were working on the crossover scene, in Gypsy, where the young Dainty June becomes the older Dainty June, and it's just a running backwards. I got tied into such a knot, I literally couldn't move. And so, and I've thought about that so much, and I've said to myself, I will never, 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 ever make somebody feel like that. And I think now that I was so young then. Now I think if anybody ever did that to me again, I would say, look, you want something from me and I want to give it to you, but the way you're going at it, you are completely destroying everything. So I just would stand up for myself. But I didn't, ballet had always been such a love effort for me, and with a teacher that I respected and loved. And it was just such a shock running into this demon, that I just didn't know how to I didn't know how to cope with it.
wow. What a great lesson to come out of that, though. So that's
Yeah.
great. I can't believe that we are at the end of this. I hope you've all had as much fun as I have getting to know all of you.
Yes,
And
fabulous.
Tony, I do want to do that Grey Gardens show.
Oh, I'd love
So
that.
yeah,
Love that.
we'll
Yes,
make that
please.
happen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give my final comments for the day, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ellen. You will pick the next person, and then you'll pick the next person until the last person standing. And don't worry about how to end the show. As soon as the last person says goodbye, the final credits will roll and I will end the show. But when it comes to vulnerability, I've been thinking about this myself. Every single time that all of us step in front of a camera, we step on stage, we sit down to write on the page, we send those books out into the world, we are at our most vulnerable. And it's how we process it. You have no control over how other people are going to show up or not show up. You only have control on how you respond to those situations.
Mhm.
Carol Cook, and I can understand Tony because I've been in the same position so many nights with her and Tom, just laughing and laughing and laughing. She was truly one of the funniest people on the planet.
Unbelievable.
I had a talk with them both on Christmas Day.
Oh, good.
Thank God we had that day. I produced her last show in New York.
Oh,
And when we brought her to New York, uh, it was at 54 Below. Their first response was they didn't think that she would be able to sell tickets because she had not performed in New York in so long. And I said, let's just book her. Let's see what happens. And we booked her. And in 2 days, she was sold out.
yeah.
So they added the second performance and she killed both of them.
Mhm.
And at that time, she was 96 years old,
Incredible.
96 years young, I might add. But she went out there and she gave and gave and gave. It reminded me of something that Carol Channing once said. She said, in this business, there are entertainers and there are performers.
Mhm.
An entertainer is always focused on the audience. A performer is only thinking of themselves.
Mhm.
A seal is a performer. It's
Mm.
only looking to balance a ball on its nose, flap its wings to get a fish. It's only looking for the reward. So I think that we all need to hold on to our vulnerability. We need to keep putting it out there. We have to realize that each and every day is a gift and go out and do the best job that you can possibly do. And those that are going to show up are going to show up. And those that aren't, you have no control over it. So
Right.
just let it go. I end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Pick up the phone and call a friend that you haven't spoken to in a while. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, a phone call. And let that person know how they matter in your life. Go a step further. All of the links for all of these books are going to be on my YouTube channel. Please buy these books, buy two. Buy one for yourself and buy one for a friend. And just keep it going and keep it going and keep it going. A dear friend of mine once said, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different size boats. And I don't care if you're on a yacht or a sailboat or a canoe or a raft, or if you're on a tugboat pushing everything upstream. Whatever boat you're in, just make sure that you do it with a skipper by your side. And with that, I'm going to leave the screen. And Ellen, it's all yours. It's all yours.
Well, it was a pleasure meeting all of you
Yes.
and speaking with you. And it's funny, other than when Richard had interviewed myself and my co-author and colleague Valerie about our books, I've been invited to be a mystery guest, and I end up with people that are in the performing industry. And I'm always, and I'm the nurse in the room, but I think what I wanted to leave you with is that, you know, I combined my love of the nursing profession and wanting to get a message out through our two books, Nurses on the Inside, about the HIV/AIDS epidemic, and Beyond the Mask, about the COVID epidemic, that there's a large disparity in who gets care and who doesn't. And it was that way in the late 70s, early 80s, and 90s with the HIV epidemic. And it certainly was more apparent with COVID pandemic. With the HIV/AIDS epidemic, remember, there were no cell phones, there was no social media, there was no documentation the way that the COVID pandemic was documented. So a lot of the inequities in healthcare were not as well documented back in the HIV/AIDS epidemic as they are now. But they really are the same. Certain people are given rights to healthcare and others are not, and it should not be this way. And so I leave you with that thought that everybody, a virus doesn't discriminate. A virus is just a virus looking for a host.
So true.
And care
Yeah.
should not discriminate either. People deserve health care, people deserve education, and people deserve access to all these things. And I appreciate all of your listening, and I will certainly be reading your books. And I will hand it now to Tony.
Thank you, Ellen. I don't know if you can hear me, but I think that you're a rock star. My mother was a nurse. My sister's a nurse. Where would we be in this world? I wouldn't be here without a nurse. Literally, I wouldn't be here without a nurse. So thank you. And you guys, Lane and Kevin, wow, so great to hear your stories. Thank you, Richard. This has been a wonderful experience. I just want everybody to go out and read a book. Get these amazing books, read a book, go somewhere different in your life, take a trip. It's the best way to travel and no danger of getting COVID by doing it. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to coming back with the Marlefon himself, Richard. God bless you guys. Thank you. I throw this to Lane.
Well, it's been a thrilling experience for me, meeting you all, learning, especially the things that I didn't know that nurses have to go through. My goodness gracious. I'm just thankful that I got to be on this show. Kevin, it's up to you now, I guess, to close.
Lane, thank you. When Richard reached out to me about this, I thought, well, how is this going to work? And he said, oh, don't worry about it. This has been such a pleasure to hear your stories, Ellen and Lane and Tony, to hear your stories of creativity, of resilience, of vitality, and great heart. And I feel great after an hour in your presence, hearing from you. And I think I'll end by saying, Richard Skipper, thank you for bringing us all together. You're Dick Cavett and Johnny Carson and Dinah Shore all rolled into one. And it's been a delight being here with all of you today. So thank you all very, very much.